Welcome back. This is the second hour of Overdrive. I'm Matthew Cauz. That is Dave Feschuk. And Dave, the closing ceremonies at the Olympics. I was a theater major 1,000 million years ago back in the day. So, I studied in the arts. And I'm watching the closing ceremony. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on.
Really?
I know they're trying to do some sort of artistic expression of the athletics and the rings and all this. I'm just sitting there going, can we have Summer McIntosh, race against the shark in the Seine River? Just dumb it down for a dummy like me. It's just very highfalutin, the closing ceremonies.
Yeah, I didn't see the whole thing. It got kind of dumbed down. Mm-hmm. The Americans dumbed it down.
Hold on, we'll get there.
They brought in the action hero.
How dare you? You know what the Americans did? They kicked it up a notch.
Did they?
Yes, okay, because the French side, it's beautiful music, and there's artistic expression and dance, and people in odd costumes that look like they belong hung up on a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And then who saves the day?
Yeah.
Who always saves the day? Tom Cruise.
Incredible.
Jumps off the top of the stadium, does a stunt. He's in his mid-60s, gets on a motorcycle, parachutes, Red Hot Chili Peppers on Venice Beach. The Americans know how to do it. We're going to do stunts, fireworks, motorcycles, and Snoop Dogg.
And you know what else Tom Cruise did that I think is just his greatest skill?
What's that?
And it's completely underrated.
Yeah.
He's known as this, pretty boy, great movie star, box office giant.
Yep.
The dude, he sprinted.
He did.
Nobody sprints.
Yes.
Like Tom Cruise sprints.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure he does he probably does the 100 in 17 seconds.
Oh, how dare you?
He's 62 years old.
Yeah.
But man, he looks like he is absolutely tearing it up. He still does at 62.
He's the greatest entertainer of this generation, and it's not even close.
Whoa.
Okay, let me ask you this. I don't know who you're going to put ahead of him.
What generation?
Well, let's go the last 50 years. Let's go the last 50 years.
All right.
Because in the last Mission Impossible movie, Tom Cruise, was on a motorcycle and jumped off a mountain, with a parachute on.
I'll give you that.
I don't remember Taylor Swift doing that. I don't know Marlon Brando doing that. I don't know whatever entertainer from whatever generation you want. Mick Jagger never did that. To me, Tom Cruise, greatest entertainer.
All right. Look, you just named some really great entertainers. Taylor Swift, there's never been we don't know a bigger artist. Mm-hmm. In a world where everything's fractured.
Yeah. Taylor
Swift has been a universal.
Yes, she has.
A universal. It's hard to be a universal now more than ever. Mm-hmm. And the world loves Taylor Swift and pays exorbitant amounts of money to see her perform.
Too much, I would argue.
Yeah. Glad it's not my money.
I'm glad I'm an uncle.
Yeah, exactly. You talked about Mick Jagger, the Rolling Stones, 50 years. 50, how about 60?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mick Jagger was hanging out with Leon Marchand, the French swimmer, at some of the track and field events.
They tour the world at random, at will, year after year after year. They're are they great grandfathers? I think so.
Oh no,
they gotta be getting close.
Yeah,
he's still. Mick is still, producing.
Mick Jagger
producing.
I would feel bad to be an 80-year-old near Mick Jagger, because I feel the contrast would be pretty significant.
Yeah.
Between what I'm doing with my life at 80 and there's him still running on a stage.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, Tom Cruise is great, but I think you're sort of overrating him. He's had a lot of stinkers. There's been a lot of moments in his career where people have said Tom Cruise has lost it.
I know, but then he comes back, and Top Gun saved Hollywood, and the last Mission Impossible.
There were
40
years between. There were 40 years between the two Top Gun movies, or something close to that, weren't there?
He was biding his time.
Okay. It wasn't like he was churning out Top Gun after Top Gun.
No, he was waiting. He was waiting.
Okay. Look, I don't disagree that he's an excellent entertainer. Yeah. I've liked many of his movies and loved some of them. But I think you're slightly, to say I just can't believe how definitive you are. He is the greatest.
Okay, how about this? We can agree on this. No entertainer has burned more calories to entertain us than Tom Cruise.
Yes. I think you're onto something there. The way he sprints, the way he climbs, the way he parachutes.
Yeah.
I don't even know, Spider-Man's up buildings. And apparently he does a lot of his own stunts.
A lot of his own stunts as well.
A lot of his own stunts.
Yes.
Very impressive stuff. I want to get the next guest's take on Tom Cruise's sprinting form.
Oh, that's a perfect way to start it. Speaking of impressive, the coach, Athletics Canada, Glenroy Gilbert, had some great interviews after the men winning the 4x100 gold. He's joining us now on the Maple Toyota hotline. And Glenroy, we were going to talk about Andre DeGrasse winning the gold, but Dave Feschuk is a better idea. How would you assess and rate the form and the sprint style of Tom Cruise?
You know what? It looks pretty good. I wouldn't say it's probably not very effective because he's going straight up and down. But the form, actual mechanics of how he moves is not bad at all.
Well, I would say it must be very effective because he's still alive in all these Mission Impossible movies.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Hey, Glenn. First off, congratulations. That was it was a great moment, and it put a bow on the Olympics for Canada. And we were talking about it off the top of the show. You guys winning gold, I think, might have been, between that or something with Summer McIntosh, the top moment for Canada in these summer games. So I don't have a clever question to start. I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you very much. No, I really appreciate it. It was exciting to see the guys do that.
What was the meeting like? And you talked about it in the interview. What was the meeting like the day before the final?
Yeah, so because typically in our meetings we will go over the video and we'll go through the times, the splits on the corner, the speed through the zones. We'll do all of that. We'll look at the stick handling. We'll kind of review the entire race, and we did do that. But then I asked our biomechanist Dana to turn it all off, and I basically sat there at the edge of my chair, and the guys are sitting around. And I basically said to them, look, here's where we're at, okay? We've gone through these numbers. You guys know what they are. You know what they mean. We've interpreted them time and time again. And for years, we've built a pretty good library of this stuff. But what's going to happen tomorrow is going to be beyond these numbers, because you have to be ready. You essentially ask yourself the question, how do you want to leave the Olympic Stadium? Because there's no guarantee any of us are back in L.A. This is your moment. What is that moment going to be? Because they each had their own challenges throughout the games themselves. So this was an opportunity to say, okay, we barely made it into the final. What are you going to do different? What's going to happen? How do you want to leave the Olympic Stadium in Paris? Do you want to leave it as a medalist? Do you want to leave it as the Olympic champions? What do you guys want? And it's only you can answer that. You have to define that for yourself on the day.
And when you said that, Glenroy, and you were looking at these fine athletes that you're coaching, what were you seeing back? Like, what kind of feedback were you getting from the athletes when you said those words?
You know what it is? They're very they're not one to say a lot because they're thinking about it. And I even said, you guys have got some soul searching to do tonight, and you have to come back out tomorrow with an idea, an objective. What are you going to do different that you have not done up to this point? Okay, because nobody said anything. They just kind of, they move around real slow to begin with, right? And they're just kind of, there's almost like this pensive look. And Aaron's usually the one that really overthinks it. And we completely lost him. But they did understand that they would have to do something that was going to be nothing like they've ever done. And even when they won the World Championships in Eugene, it wasn't the same race at all because they actually qualified one of the top times in Eugene, whereas in Paris, they were, I think, 7th qualifying time getting in on a small queue. So, listen, with myself, our two other, Charles Allen and Fabrice, we've talked to these guys time and time again just around what it is they need to do and how, if they just execute their own race. I talked to them about the U.S. was going to move through the middle of the track. Japan was going to be there. South Africa was going to be there. China was going to be there. So all very strong teams are around us. So how were we going to respond to that? And I think having lane 9 was also a blessing for the group as well.
And from the TV side of things, seeing in lane 9 and Andre DeGrasse at the end, that was incredible. This might sound like a dumb question, but how important was this gold when you consider, DeGrasse, and we're spoiled. We are spoiled here, not seeing DeGrasse get a medal in the 100 and 200 meter, and Aaron Brown, who was disqualified in that false start in the 100-meter heats. How important was this for these four individuals to end the way they did?
It was massive, right? Because I mean, they're getting up there in age as it relates to sprinting, okay, and they know that. So this was massive. The rounds in the 200 didn't go well. Aaron, false started in the 100. DeGrasse didn't get the races that he was looking for, even though he had a seasonal best in the 100. The sport continues to evolve and get better and better, and you have to kind of evolve with it. Right. So these guys understood that, look, we haven't been our best as individuals, but collectively we can get out there and do exactly what we did in Eugene. Because, again, what happens is the other teams, they look at Canada and they go, well, they barely qualified, so we're going to write them out. Plus, they're in lane 9. Nobody's going to be paying attention to them out there because the race in the 4x1 is usually in the middle of the track. So you saw everything just worked out well. Very strong legs by each of the runners to give DeGrasse a bit of a lead coming off the corner.
Glenroy, we saw your great teammate from the 1996 gold medalist 4x100 team, Donovan Bailey. He was doing some work for CBC. We saw the footage of him actually watching the race. We're watching him watch the race. And at one point in the race, he's standing there watching the monitor and saying, "We're going to win. We're going to win." Yeah. I'm wondering, where were you watching it, and was there a point where you came to the realization that, hey, we're going to win?
Yeah, you know what? I was watching it like in the middle of the backstretch. So I was sitting right where Brendan would run. So I was sitting up because Sarah Mitten was throwing at the same time. So I was making sure that I had eyes on both. And when I saw Jerome come into the zone, and I didn't see that there were anybody around him, but again, there's a stagger of the track that you have to consider. But when Brendan had the stick and I got 50 meters into the corner, I was like, okay, all Andre has to do is get off the tape, because if he gets off the tape, then these guys are going to win, because there was such a lead from Jerome and Aaron, and then now Brendan. They ran fantastic. I mean, you can't even begin. I didn't see, honestly, and I can be very honest and tell you, I did not see that coming. I thought, if they do everything right, they can definitely get a medal. They're going to have to run to get a medal. But by probably with 150 meters left in the race, I thought they could win gold. I said they can win gold. The only thing that needs to happen is Andre needs to get off the mark. If he gets off the mark and sets a good target, nobody's going to run down Andre. So
Athletics Canada head coach Glenroy Gilbert's joined us, and you're right. They got off to a great start, and just the explosion. It looked like the Andre DeGrasse we've seen at the previous two Olympics, and we got to see that, which is incredible because who knows where he'll be in LA. I'm wondering, Glenroy, has Noah Lyles congratulated you guys yet? Has he sent you a gift, a letter, a handwritten letter? What's going on?
No, I don't think so. But, the way this sport is, we'll probably bump into him in the spring somewhere where we're doing our relay camps, and it'll all start up all over again for the World Championships in Tokyo. So this is our hour. This is our time right now. These guys are Olympic champions. They did it when it counted the most, and I want them to fully enjoy it. And you know what? Next year will take care of itself, right? This is the moment you live for. I mean, winning an Olympic gold medal on a night when nobody thought this was going to happen, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those moments I think a lot of people remember where they were when they were watching it. And I'm sure it got lost in the mail. I'm sure there's a nice gift coming to everyone from the 4x100 from Noah Lyles, if I know him. You mentioned the moment and winning a gold. I'm wondering, Glenroy, take us back to '96. What was that day like for you?
Yeah, it was, probably similar. That's why, part of it is I feel I understand how these guys are feeling right now. When we won in 1996, it was really one of those things where we went head to head with the U.S. We knew, and back then there were 3 rounds of running, right? So you could kind of see things developing as you went. But when we went head to head with them and we made a little switch in our running order, it changed the dynamic. Putting in Robert for Carlton changed everything up for us. We got the push that we needed out of the blocks, and after that, like similar to the way the guys ran here, you had a strong backstretch, a strong corner, and then a strong anchor man. So, I mean, the joy, because again, it is the Olympic Games. You want to stand on the top of that podium with an Olympic gold medal around your neck. And you know what? These guys they've forged a bond that will last a lifetime, similar to the one that I have with Donovan Bruni, Robert, and Carlton. So, yeah, it's an amazing time for them, and I hope they enjoy every second of it.
Hey, when you sort of compare winning as an athlete, Glenroy, which you've done, and now winning, the 4x1 as a coach, how do you contrast to compare those two thrills?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. It's a really... Yeah, like when you're out there running, that's one thing. But I'll tell you this, like as a coach, especially when I started this job, like in 2002 as an apprentice coach, my goal was simple. And I'm a goal-oriented person anyway, so my goal was simple. And the goal was to put Canada back on the top of the podium. Now, it took far longer than I thought it would, but the fact of the matter is these guys now have 3 Olympic medals. They have a bronze, a silver, and now a gold, and Canada is back on the top of the podium in the men's 4x1 relay. So it's taken 20 years, but at the end of the day, the job has gotten done. Now, the job isn't over. We always want to stay there, right? Our job, and we are in the business of winning medals. So this is obviously a big one, but then we prepare for next year.
Glenroy, Coach, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the show today. And again, congratulations. It was a heck of a moment for everyone involved.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That is Glenroy Gilbert, who joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota. Check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. So the opposite of the 4x100 was Canada falling flat on their face against France in the first knockout round of the men's Olympic basketball. I think that's about as Captain Obvious a point as I can bring up today. I would imagine you agree?
You're right. That was the team in a lot of ways for Canada, right? I mean, people were expecting a lot. This was a highly anticipated moment in the history of Canadian men's basketball, and it did not live up to the expectation, to say the least.
Down by 13 at the end of the first. I mean, and that's what we were saying after it happened. It's not that they lost. Because listen, France, they got into the finals. They challenged the States. Steph Curry had to be an absolute hero in the fourth quarter, one of his best moments as a basketball player, to eliminate France in the gold medal game. But Canada was down by 13.
Yeah.
They scored like 10 points in the first quarter. They were, a couple times they got it down to maybe a 5-point deficit. But it's the fact that France led throughout. France out-hustled, outworked. And Batum, Wemby, Gobert, and I'm forgetting
Cordigne.
The other NBA player. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, yeah, it was Fournier.
Fournier, thank you.
Oh, Cordigne killed him, too. The EuroLeague guy.
But I'm saying the 4 NBA guys were 6 of 19 for 22 points.
Yeah.
And Canada still lost by 9.
Well, I see the point you're making there.
Yeah.
It was actually it wasn't the NBA guys that killed him. It was the EuroLeague guys that killed him. Mm-hmm. The EuroLeague guys carried it. Isaiah Cordigne being number 1 on that list. He absolutely thrashed him. And that's a good reminder, Cauz, it's having covered international basketball for many years. I was at the 2004 Athens games when something nobody thought would ever happen happened, and the U.S. NBA team, LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson and all kinds of NBA heroes.
Tim Duncan at 28.
Let's mention that too. Coached by Larry Brown. They got their butts whipped by Puerto Rico. They got their butts whipped by a lot of teams. Lithuania beat them too. They ended up getting a bronze medal. And that was a moment, like this is a moment where it reminds you that as much as we all sit here and we all watch the NBA and we pay attention to the NBA, it's not the only league in the world, okay? And especially when you're playing FIBA rules, the guys that play EuroLeague, the guys that play in the European leagues, they have a bit of an advantage because they play those rules all year round. They grow up playing those rules, and you cannot take them lightly. And just because you're trotting out a bunch of NBA players with really good NBA stats doesn't mean you're going to have a bunch of guys that can take to the FIBA game. And just because they don't have a bunch of NBA players doesn't mean they can't beat you.
Yeah.
And we forget that lesson. You know, everybody was sitting here going, Canada's the second favorite. Canada's got the best backcourt in the world. Canada, you know, they should be in the gold medal game against the U.S. or it's a disappointment. Well, if they were playing by NBA rules in a 48-minute game with NBA referees, maybe, probably, I would say probably. But it's not the same. It's not the same thing. It's a different sport in a lot of ways, and you cannot underestimate the skills and the particular way of playing that FIBA requires.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. I think just always what took me aback was that it was double-digit deficit for so much of that game. As for the United States, to me, the most impressive thing about the men's basketball team is not that they won. They have the most talent. Also, so many of those guys, they've won in FIBA before. They've won past Olympics. You know, LeBron James has been there. You know, Durant's been there. A lot of guys have been there, not Steph. But what was impressive for me was no one had more stakes and pressure than them.
Yeah.
Like anyone else that gets silver, the nation would be thrilled. Look how happy Jokic was in Serbia when they won bronze. I wonder if Jokic is sober now.
I doubt it.
I doubt it, nor should he. He doesn't need to be. But I mean, I think that's the thing is there was so much pressure because if the States lose, then it's a massive upset. Like that,
yeah.
Them having to battle through that was impressive. But I'm never as like the games were entertaining against Serbia and against France. They're very entertaining games, but at no point did I think America was going to lose. And that's what always takes away for a little bit for me from an entertainment standpoint. When I'm watching a game and I know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
It's like watching a Marvel movie. It might be really entertaining and the special effects are great. And Robert Downey Jr., wow, what a sacrifice what he did to Thanos at the end. But you know the Avengers are going to win.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. That's like Olympic gold in hockey is much more compelling because Canada and the United States are so close. Now, some of the quarterfinal matches, not that entertaining on both the men's and the women's side, but at least the gold medal, you have two evenly matched teams.
They play best on best Olympic hockey? Oh, yeah. We haven't seen that.
At some point.
At some point they will.
Oh, my God. Connor McDavid's going to go nuts.
We're looking forward to it. Yeah, actually, you know, somebody said that to me, like watching best on best basketball, it just makes you think, man, can't wait for best on best hockey. Mm-hmm. And that's coming.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to be seeing that as soon as next, February with the Four Nations thing as a bit of an audition, a bit of a trial run for the Olympics.
Four Nations thing. That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too excited about that, but at least it's a run. It's it's like a dress rehearsal for the Olympics, right? But no, you're right. Like, especially the Serbia game, like Jokic just wasn't playing well enough. Like he didn't have it going. Couldn't make a shot. Didn't make a three, right? He was 0 for 6 from 3.
Yeah, 7 of 17 for 17 points. And like, listen, he did so many good things. And also,
if he had been playing well, like if he was actually making shots, I think you might have had more of a feeling that the U.S. could have been beaten. But every time, like he had a lot of chances to hit big shots, and he just couldn't make them.
The later the game got, the more pressure, and the other Serbian players, you know, the stakes were so high. And what I felt bad for Jokic is it's okay, you're being defended by who? Well, it's going to be Embiid, and then it's going to be Anthony Davis.
Yeah. And
then sometimes it's going to be Bam Adebayo, or they're going to put LeBron on you, and then the center is going to be around you. Like the degree of difficulty that Jokic was under was far greater than any American player, with maybe the exception of one of those Steph Curry threes where Victor Wembanyama's 18-foot arm was defending in front of him.
No, you're right. Like, and they knew it. Like, everybody knew. They can't take him off the floor. They couldn't take Jokic off the floor. They only ended up taking him off for, a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And when they did, it was like, get him back out there because we're going to lose if he's off the floor. And so if they weren't going to foul him out, they were going to wear him out. And I think they did a bit of both. Right?
They did.
They certainly got him into foul trouble for a large part of the game, and they also got him into a fatigue issue, which kind of prevented him from making it a one-man show, right? And really kind of single-handedly beating them because he just couldn't make the shots. And I don't know if that was legs or it was just a bad shooting night, but it probably was a bit of a combination of both.
In the end, they were incredible games with so much talent. It's both things can be true. They were incredible games to watch, but it lacked a little bit of compelling for me because even when they were down against Serbia, I never thought America was going to lose. Against France, they led pretty much throughout. Now, the 4 Steph Curry three-pointers, you know, a lot of those where the game was close.
Yeah.
You know, it was a 3-point game after a Wemby tip shot with under 3 minutes to go. The last one, Wembanyama made a 3. And then with 35 seconds left, Steph hit the 3 that just iced it.
Yeah.
Like, that was an incredible moment.
It was.
but it just lacked a little compelling because, I kind of knew what the final result was going to be.
Steph's pretty compelling. I mean,
He is.
I mean, he had people like, I don't know how often you'll see fellow NBA 100 millionaires getting excited about a fellow NBA 100 millionaire in the way those guys were getting excited.
That is
Steph.
cool. No, you're
like
right.
They're doing the night thing.
Yeah.
Like other guys that have, like Jason Tatum and, the guys that aren't playing, the bench warmers, Halliburton on the bench. They're getting
Giddy,
amped up.
Yes.
About a fellow pro, a guy they play against in the NBA on a nightly basis.
You know what it looked like at that moment? All those guys with championships, all-stars, MVPs, hundreds of millions of dollars. At that moment, it was like we're looking at a high school team.
Yeah.
The way they were reacting to the star player. They were giddy. They were just excited. At that moment, it was just pure basketball.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
Like, it's easy to be cynical about the States, and LeBron can make you cynical because LeBron's always about LeBron, wearing the gold shoes and, getting his kid a job with the Lakers and all the rest of it. You can go down the list of stuff that, ticks you off about LeBron. But how can you root against Steph Curry?
You can't.
Like, it's impossible. Like, I mean, I guess we've got a soft spot for him here because he had a little bit of his childhood in Toronto. Certainly those of us who covered the Raptors when his dad was playing for the Raptors, we watched him and his brother shoot between practices or after practice or between intermissions of games. They'd go out there and heave up three-pointers, and they'd make a lot of them, even when they were just, young kids. So we got that soft spot. He spent some time playing minor basketball around Toronto. So there are people that know Steph Curry in Toronto as a young kid. So maybe there's a little bit of that too, but I don't even think it's that. I just think he's just such a likable character, right? Like, even if you hate the Warriors, you hated the Kevin Durant thing that ruined the NBA.
Yeah.
They were a super team. They
did ruin the NBA.
They were villains.
Yeah.
It was hard to hate Steph.
Hard to
all
hate
of that. You could hate Draymond. You could think Durant was, silly for joining the Warriors. Cowardly for joining the Warriors. And I think those were all legitimate takes. But through it all, it's been very tough to look at Steph Curry and find a bone to pick.
And on the LeBron case, he's 39 years old, and with all the greatest players in the world in Paris, at worst, he was the second best player in the tournament.
Yeah.
That's incredible at 39.
It was. He forgot the Grecian formula around the beard, too.
Yeah.
He let
little gray going on there.
Got to get a maybe he's like you got to steal that Just for Men ad from Bob Weeks.
Yeah.
You got to get that endorsement. You got to get that extra endorsement money.
Well, if anyone needs money, it's
LeBron.
It's LeBron. Yeah. Not paying his son nearly enough. Shame on you, Lakers. On the other side, Blue Jays pitcher Chris Bassitt with an incredibly unfortunate excuse for his bad performance yesterday against Oakland. And I want to try to take a different take on it. So we'll get into that next. You are watching Overdrive right here on TSN. Keegan Matheson will join Overdrive at the top of the hour from MLB.com. Covers the Blue Jays. They lose yesterday 8-4 to the Oakland A's. This is Overdrive. I'm Matthew Cauz. That is Dave Feschuk. And this game was over before it started. First inning, 6 runs by Oakland. It wasn't all Chris Bassitt's fault. There was an error early on, but he wasn't very good. And after the game, he had a very interesting reasoning behind his poor performance.
Roof being closed, completely different than roof being open. Wasn't really ready for it. My worst sinkers with the roof open around 16, best sinkers around 22. Today, worst sinkers were 13, best sinkers were 15. So I had to completely change my mechanics to kind of get the movement I wanted.
You've obviously pitched indoors in the past. What are the adjustments that have worked for you?
Yeah, this is just a different one. Obviously, indoors is indoors, but this is it's different.
So it's easy to listen to that, to watch that, and just wonder, what are you doing? I mean, it's such a lame excuse. And I thought on First Up this morning, the guys were interviewing Steve Phillips, and they chatted about that as well. So the easy thing is just to look at that and go, Chris, that's a dumb excuse. What are you doing? The roof was closed. My question for you, Dave, is this is not a rookie. This is not a guy who's been in the league for a couple of years. He's been in the league for like a decade. He's started like 180 games. He's appeared in almost 200 games. What is he doing at that age saying that, knowing that not only is no one going to be sympathy, they're going to look at that with derision?
Yeah, it's probably just some defense mechanism. Like, you got to tell yourself it was something other than you. You got to blame something just to keep your confidence up. But you also got to know how to handle yourself in public.
Yeah.
And a 35-year-old veteran that Chris Bassitt happens to be should know better than to blame the fact that the roof was closed in a park that you play in.
Yeah.
It's your home park, and you know the roof can be closed. Like, you know.
And it closes fast.
It's a possibility.
It's not like between pitches. It suddenly goes from open to close.
No.
Like, that thing takes forever.
Exactly. No, it's preposterous. And the bottom line is, like, look, that was a particularly bad game for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a bad game, a couple weeks ago in Camden Yards in the good old open air, gave up 5 earned runs in 4 innings. He had a bad game, in Detroit not too long ago, gave up 5 earned runs in 6 innings.
They're not playing at the Silver down there.
Yeah, that's outdoors as well.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of bad outdoor games this season. This is a bad season for Chris Bassitt. Like, this has not been the kind of season the Jays hoped they would get from Chris Bassitt, which is one of the many, many reasons why the Blue Jays are not playing the way they'd hoped.
Yeah, he hasn't played as well. Gausman hasn't pitched as well. And what Chris Bassitt said, if he had, let's say, in the offseason, was doing, say, a long format interview on a podcast or whatever, and discussed how when the roof is closed, how it can impact his pitches and get into all the science and the metrics and the analytics, that could be a fascinating conversation.
Sure.
But when you've just lost, and you lost to Oakland, who, good on them. They've already, I believe, matched their win total from last year, which is actually remarkable considering, the team's leaving at some point soon. And playing home games there must stink. But you don't do it after the loss. You're like 12 games under 500. You get shelled early and often. That's not the time or place for that. Like, that's the time and place for just give us the cliches and we'll all move on with our lives.
Yeah. You're right, because this is the time when Blue Jay fans are very frustrated, right? And you don't need to pile on the frustration with silly comments, you know, and deflections away from the fact that, guess what? Ultimately, it's on me. Like, I stunk today. The Oakland A's lit me up, of all teams. And people would respect that, but they will not respect, my sinker's just not sinking because we're in the dome.
Yeah.
Which the Blue Jays play in, which is the team that employs me. It just doesn't hold any water.
Maybe, you know what? How about this? Let's spin this around. Because I look at that quote, and that says to me, utter frustration. That says frustration personally, frustration professionally, and that the team is really bad. You just lost to your former team. You're going to have your last in the American League East. You've been irrelevant since the start of the year. You've been absolutely irrelevant. And we've heard Chris Bassitt and Kevin Gausman talk earlier about how, hey, we know that we need to pitch really well for the team to win, which is code for the bats aren't getting it done.
Yeah.
So I look at that as it was a ridiculous statement to make at that time, but then I wonder, where did it come from? And it must come from just the highest level of frustration for a guy at that age.
Well, and that's fair. Like, I understand where the frustration's coming from. Like, it would be shocking if, as competitors, Gausman and Bassitt aren't frustrated with the way this season's gone, because they've been really good at times for the Blue Jays. They were great last season.
They were.
They were a stellar pitching staff last season, and the bats didn't come through for them. And there is a legitimate argument there. Like, you could see why the pitching staff would be frustrated with the offense, because it does put them in a tough position. You feel like you got to be perfect to win games as a Blue Jays pitcher, which is one of the reasons why Chris Bassitt's 9-11 this season. Not that wins and losses are the be-all and end-all pitching stat, but if you're not getting run support, that's what happens, right? And it says something about the Blue Jays offense, Cauz, that Vlad Guerrero Jr. concludes this 22-game hitting streak. Longest one of his career, ties his longest of his career. He's the hottest hitter in baseball, hitting almost 500 during the streak. And they add that hot bat. He is the hottest bat available in the American League, and they still go 11-11.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't have been hotter. Your best player couldn't have been better than your best player. It's his best he's ever been, and you still went 11-11 with that guy as hot as he could possibly be. So what does that say about your team?
It's a bad team. It's just, it's a good point. Maybe Chris Bassitt did that to take attention away from the fact that Vlad went 0 for 4 Hitting streak ends at 22 games.
Into a couple double plays.
Last 2 at-bats hits into a double play. So maybe Chris Bassitt's like, I'm going to come out there and say this ridiculous thing about the roof being closed, and that's the reason why I was so poor against Oakland. And then we're not talking about Vlad going 0 for 4.
That's why Matt Kuchar pulled his stunt of leaving the course early last night to take away from the collapse of Max Grazerman.
That's nice. That's very nice of Matt Kuchar.
Who was leading the tournament by 4 shots with 5 strokes to play, and then blew a ball out of bounds and took a quadruple bogey.
I don't know how you can follow the golf with all the Olympics going on. There's too much sports.
Yeah, there was a lot of sports going on.
A lot of sports. I had no idea about the Matt Kuchar thing until this morning.
Really?
Just because all the focus, it was on the Olympics and the closing ceremonies and me trying to decipher what the hell was going on with France, and then, getting to watch the concert at Venice Beach. I'm like, all right, nice job. By the Americans.
Do you think that was a nice job? Did they do a good job on the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Snoop Dogg,
the whole thing,
Billie Eilish thing?
What about the Olympic rings? What about the Olympic rings on the Hollywood sign?
That was the work of the great Tom Cruise, the greatest entertainer of our generation.
The greatest entertainer. Yes, 100% the greatest entertainer of our generation. Speaking of entertainment, it is a shame Vlad didn't get a hit, because we're searching for things to talk about and enjoy with the Blue Jays, who still... we still got over a month of Blue Jays baseball. And on Saturday, the Jays lose 1-0. They had 2 hits, but Vlad had one of those hits. So then it felt like, all right,
keep it going.
Keep it going. Is he going to set I think the Jays record is like 28 games in a row or something like that. Is he going to get close to 30? At the very least, it gives you something to root for. Like baseball, that is the hardest sport to stay engaged in when your team, it's a combination of your team is bad and there's no super young talent, that young talented prospect.
Right.
That doesn't exist. So it makes it even harder. Rooting for Vlad was one of the only things that Jays fans had.
You're right. And there's nothing like a hitting streak. Like it really, it's a lot of fun. And if he could have kept it going and challenged a franchise record. No one's expecting you to challenge the major league record, 56 games or anything like that. But, just keep it going for a while. Give us something to talk about. Give people something to point to every night. Because you're right. Like right now, it is tough to come up with a reason to get excited about watching a Jays game. Like it really is.
Let me ask you this. What do you think are the top stories going to be tomorrow for the Blue Jays after tonight's 9:00 game against the Los Angeles Angels? And it starts at 9:38. Like for me, I worked years and years and years with Michael Landsberg on Off the Record. And every day when we would have the morning meeting, it was always, what's the question? If the Jays won 7-1, the Leafs won 5-1. Okay, that's great. That's the box score. What's the question behind it? And I'll be honest with you, it's hard to think of what are the compelling 2 or 3 things with the Blue Jays. I mean, I can find that with almost every, say, NFL team. I can find that with the Argonauts. I can find that in the CFL. I can find that, obviously everything to do with the Olympics. But the Blue Jays right now, it's, trade deadline's done.
I mean, I think the question is, how are these guys still in charge? That's one of the questions.
Yeah, but we've done that.
We've done it.
We've done that one over and over again. And then it goes to you go to the next level, how does Rogers feel about this?
Yeah, we never hear about that.
As I said, we'll have Keegan Matheson will join us. He's got a new book out about the Blue Jays that he's writing. I want to ask him about Rogers as well, because how does ownership feel about this? They've owned the team.
They don't talk, though.
They've owned the team since 2000.
They don't talk.
No.
They're not Jerry Jones.
They are not. I'd still rather have Jerry Jones. Like, I know we laugh at the Cowboys, and we should. And contract situation with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Dallas does do a lot of winning. They don't do a lot of winning in the playoffs, but they do a lot of winning. They win their division a whole bunch.
Yeah.
They've won some playoff games here or there. It's probably a little bit below their standards, but they've done more winning than more NFL. They're certainly in the top half in terms of win percentage.
That's always my point when people attack Jerry Jones. Like he's got Super Bowls. Like, I know it was a long time ago, but it wasn't 1967. It was 1990s.
Yeah, the last one was 95. I think with Jerry, what it comes down to is he never should have divorced with with Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
That's the issue, is that part of the demise of the Cowboys, they won a Super Bowl without him. Barry Switzer 2 years later, but that was Jimmy Johnson's roster. You know, that wasn't about Barry Switzer X's and O's and a new personnel staff drafting and developing. It was the ego of Jerry Jones not being able to get along with his head coach.
Yeah.
That certainly played a part in the fact that Dallas went from being the best team in the NFL to being sort of a middle class, sometimes upper middle class NFL franchise.
Yeah, there's something to that. And then you always worry about, you know, the owner appointing his son second in command.
Yeah.
You know, the Bronny James.
Hey, Stephen Jones has done more. Stephen Jones drafted Micah Parsons.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, Stephen Jones has done. I mean, it's a low bar to say who's done more, blank or Bronny James, because it's probably blank. So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Hey, let's. I'm rooting for Bronny. Don't get me wrong.
No, we're all rooting for Bronny because it'd be a great story. We don't like how the story got here,
right?
Because it goes against the meritocracy of professional sports.
And he's put in a tough spot.
Yeah, he's been put in a really tough spot. And an also very easy spot as well in terms of guaranteed money that the Lakers gave him.
He was going to have money either way.
Not that much. Speaking of the Cowboys and the NFL, on the other side, we'll get into a whole bunch of things, but there's some sound. Sean McVay, the head coach of the Rams, we're going to play this sound where he's doing like live play-by-play in the Rams-Cowboys preseason game. And for everyone listening and watching, I promise you, we are not going to be breaking down the X's and O's of the final preseason game of week 1.
I'll come across the table if you start.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But you have to see just McVay going nuts. And it's also a reminder, do the coaches really care about preseason when one of the coaches is doing double duty? He's doing play-by-play, and he's coaching his team in the middle of a preseason.
Got to keep your job options open.
Yeah.
A little mini audition just to keep the networks aware of your skills on a mic.
A couple of years ago, McVay was being lured.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, he was being lured to the booth.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's there from when he wants it. So we'll play that really funny sound. We'll do that in a moment. That's Dave Feschuk. I'm Matthew Cauz. You are listening to Overdrive. Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. I'm Matthew Cauz. That is Dave Feschuk. If you are watching at home, the final hour of the show will switch over to TSN2. If you are listening on the radio, that has no impact on you. And if you're driving, I hope you're somewhere okay right now, because it's 5:51. That's a tough time on every road in the city of Toronto.
I think all times are tough times on every road in Toronto, generally.
3:30 in the morning, it's a delight.
Is it good?
Yeah, by 3:45, horror show. By 3:30, it's a delight.
I got to try it.
Yeah. In this week's edition of Here's Something to Chew On, brought to you by Boston Pizza, we want to know, what was your favorite moment from the Olympics? For you, Dave, I think we're both in agreement. Glenroy Gilbert was on with us earlier. The 4x100 meter would be number one.
That's hard to beat.
Yeah.
That was a tremendous, tremendous piece of running by the Canadians, and just a great piece of entertainment, because it was chaos. It was so much fun to watch.
I think for me, number 2, Canada women's soccer beating, I think it was Venezuela, to move on out of the group stage, to make it to the knockout stage, despite losing the -6
Colombia,
points.
wasn't it?
It was Colombia. Sorry, yes, Colombia. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I think that for me was probably my second favorite moment.
That was a great moment. Seeing that team come together at a time when it had become quite clear that their leadership had let them down in a really asinine way, making the stupid decision to fly a drone at an Olympics, not once but twice, over the practice of a team you haven't lost to in a generation in New Zealand, and to have your coach get credential revoked along with a couple other members of the staff. Canada did lead the Olympics in credentials revoked. Credentials revoked. We won that one, guys.
We won that one.
We didn't win the medal count, but we won the credentials revoked count. I think we had 3 soccer officials, plus that track and field coach, Andre DeGrasse's coach, was
sent home as well, with a lot of coaches sent home.
Stories of
got to do some better vetting.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that stuff. That's ugly stuff. But
yeah.
But the bottom line is, those were great moments. You know, the one moment that didn't turn into a medal moment, that 10,000 meter men's final, Mo Ahmed of St. Catharines, Ontario, my hometown, one of the great competitors we've seen. Obviously won silver in the 5,000 in Tokyo, but nearly got there to win a medal in the 10,000, which is just one of the most grueling races you can imagine. I can only imagine. to run at that level against that competition, and for Mo Ahmed to stick in there until the end, and just to lose by a fraction and come fourth, the worst of all positions.
Fourth just stinks.
Fourth stinks. It's nice that he's got a medal in the trophy case from an Olympics, but he could have had another one quite easily. And then he fell in the heats for the 5,000. He's one of my favorite Canadian athletes, just because running at that distance, running those middle distance races, Canada hasn't done that at that level before. He's the first guy, him and Justin Knight, who couldn't make this Olympics, but it was really strong in Tokyo. Like, they've done stuff that, to have runners in those fields with the Ethiopians and the Kenyans and the Ugandans, it's incredible stuff. And it was nearly a perfect moment for Mo. It didn't happen.
Yeah, fourth is the worst, especially if you're doing it in the marathon. Something to Chew On is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Summer is short, so make sure you make the most of patio season at Boston Pizza. Join us for a long lunch or a late night. See you for a pint on the patio soon. Keegan Matheson, who covers the Blue Jays for MLB.com, joins the show next.